My name is Bhagavati, and this is my husband Ramesha, and it's our great privilege and pleasure to be here with you all this morning. So this week's reading from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda, is titled, Does Satan Exist? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Bible tells us in chapter 4 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, then, after baptism, was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. To most modern minds, this passage seems quaintly obsolete. Psychologists would say, have said in fact, that the temptation of Jesus, if it occurred at all, was purely psychological. They call it a projection of desires lurking in his own subconscious mind. The subconscious plays a strong part, certainly, even if not a unique one, in any testing the spiritual seeker must undergo. The Bhagavad Gita, in dealing with this undeniable reality, quotes Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, and then Sri Krishna's reply. Yet tell me, teacher, said Arjuna, by what force doth man go to his ill, unwilling, as if one pushed him in that path? Krishna replied, desire it is, passion it is, born of the darknesses which pusheth him. Mighty of appetite, sinful and strong is this, man's enemy. Yet even Krishna describes passion as born of the darknesses. The fact is, as Paramhansa Yogananda wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, all thoughts vibrate eternally in the cosmos. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. Psychology, yes, but psychology attuned to currents of consciousness that pervade the entire universe, attracted by each of us according to our own personal inclinations. Yogananda, quoted in The Path, said, I used to think Satan was only a human invention, but now I know, and add my testimony to that of others who lived before me, that Satan is a reality. He is a universal, conscious force whose sole aim is to keep all beings bound to the wheel of delusion. We should take pains, then, to attract uplifting currents of universal consciousness and to avoid attracting the negative, which, disease that it is, can infect our thoughts even while it leads us to believe that our thoughts are purely our own. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I would like to also welcome you all. It's so nice to see so many of you this morning. I would like to start with a reading from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. It's called, Make me remember that virtuous ways are more charming than vicious ones. Teach me, O Spirit, not to discern the laws of virtue with dread, but with love. Teach me to remember that virtue, though sometimes difficult to follow at the start, becomes easy and self-fulfilling when I obey its laws, and adorns me finally with thy laurel of happiness. Teach me to remember that evil, though it promises a little pleasure at the beginning, always brings great sorrow in the end. Teach me to love the ways of virtue, which guide me to my own higher interest and highest good. Help me to shun vicious action, which is ever injurious to my true interest. Implant in me those wholesome habits which enable me always to perceive virtuous ways as more charming than vicious ones. Help me to remember that virtue, though sometimes bitter tasting at first, becomes nectar eventually, and that evil, though its taste seems sweet at the beginning, becomes poison at the end. So does Satan exist? I think I want to ask an easier question than that. Have you ever had the experience of, you make the resolution of doing something really good for you, and even then, afterwards, you find yourself doing exactly the opposite of what you wanted to do, and it's like, how did that happen? I was so sure I was going to do the right thing, and boom, here I am again doing the same old thing. Sound familiar? Or maybe one of the things that are probably more common for devotees is, you make up your mind that you're going to meditate regularly and every day, morning and night, and to meditate for longer time and longer time. And then all of a sudden, a week has gone by, a month has gone by, and you realize that, oh my God, I really didn't do it. And there are often very good reasons for not doing it. Like, I had to do that very important thing. That was really important. I couldn't meditate instead of doing that. Does this sound familiar? This clarifies a little better whether Satan exists. Like Yogananda said, thoughts are universally rooted. What does that mean exactly? What it means is that sometimes we think that what we do wrong, let's say, comes from us. It's our fault. And our only fault is that we sometimes even unconsciously or subconsciously tune into the wrong thought. It's like having a radio and, let's say there's only 2 stations. Kind of hard to imagine in LA because there's radio stations all over. But let's imagine there's only 2 stations. One station is playing beautiful, uplifting music that makes you feel calm and peaceful and joyful. And the other one is playing really fun rock and roll, and it's so fun to listen to. It makes you feel so energetic. And and which one do you choose? There are times when we are more inclined to say, you know what? I feel kind of sleepy. I feel like having fun. Let's turn on the rock and roll radio station. Nothing against rock and roll, for heaven's sakes, but it's just an example of how easy it is and how it works. We're not creating the music. We're just attuning ourselves to what we feel. And I don't know if you noticed, but whenever we have a thought, all of a sudden a thought pops up in our minds, and we start to think something negative. And have you ever noticed how you look at it and dwell on it, and before you know, this thought has become huge, and all of a sudden you start thinking negative things about other things and other people, and it grows, like it snowballs into this huge drama, and it started just with one teeny tiny little thought. This is what Satan does. Satan is a conscious, universal force that has, like Bhagavati read, has the purpose of keeping mankind in delusion. And one would think, why would God create such a thing? Well, the very fact that creation exists, the way God created was by creating the delusion of duality, the delusion that there's not only God, there's also all these other different things out there. God's there, and everything else is out there. And in our minds, that's what we think. We think that God and his creation are two separate things. And there lies the problem. So I don't know, maybe because I grew up Catholic, but I grew up thinking, I heard a lot about Satan when I was a kid. I mean, it was like, I almost heard more about Satan than God. It was so ridiculous. But I remember one thing. I didn't really have a clear idea what God was, but I remember one thing. It was really funny. I was maybe 5 or 6, and I grew up in a small village in Switzerland. There were like 1,800 people living there at that time. So everybody knew pretty much everybody. And I remember there was this old man. He wasn't completely normal mentally. But when you're a child, you don't really understand that. I was so scared of this man. So scared. I remember I would have dreams about him. And in my mind, he was like the devil. And every time I'd see him, I would run away. I was so really scared. And I thought he was the devil. Well, I wish I was right because he's dead now. And if I was right, at least, the problem would have been gone. Unfortunately, I wasn't right at all. But this is, sometimes we think of Satan, we read about Satan, say, oh, come on, this is like medieval stuff. But it's not so much about the form of Satan, although very highly advanced saints have said that they have seen Satan in form, in a very, very ugly-looking form. One that comes to mind is Padre Pio. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a very, very famous Italian saint. There's also a beautiful movie that is out on him that is really, really beautiful. I highly recommend it. But Master said that when the devotee reaches the final stages of evolution, the cosmic delusion is not happy with just playing little tricks, psychological tricks on your mind, like, don't meditate or don't do the right thing. No, it's becoming so afraid of losing this soul because the soul is about to gain his freedom. And so Satan comes out in form and tries to stop them. And he had experiences of Satan appearing to him and beating him up at night. It was really quite an interesting thing. I also read that Yogananda had a similar experience, and it's a story that you don't hear very often, but it's a short story, but I'd like to read it to you because it's quite interesting. He says, before his passing, my great guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar, told me to wear a certain kind of bangle as a special protection. With faith in his blessing in the bangle, I put it on. When I was in Bombay, just before returning to America, I realized that the satanic power was trying to destroy my life to prevent me from fulfilling the mission given to me by God and my guru. I wasn't afraid. I knew God was with me, and I remembered Master's promise of protection. I put a little light on in my room because the evil forces do not like light. For a little while I sat meditating, watchful of my spirit, and then I felt sleepy. As I opened my eyes and looked toward the right wall of the room, I saw the black form of Satan, horrible, with a cat-like face and tail. It leaped on my chest, and my heart stopped beating. Mentally, I said, I am not afraid of you, I am spirit. But still, my heart wouldn't work. Suddenly, I glimpsed an ochre robe, and there stood Master. He commanded Satan to leave, and as soon as he spoke, the evil figure vanished, and my breath started to flow again. I cried out, my Master. He said, Satan was trying to destroy you, but fear not, I am with you evermore. So, This is not medieval. This is just a few years ago. And and this is not to frighten anybody, but it's just to realize that this force exists. And they say that we can win if we know our enemies better. And it's good to know that it's there. It's good to know that, not to dwell on it and become all obsessed with it, but just to know that there is something out there that is trying to prevent us from doing all the good work, all the right things that we're doing. And so if sometimes you find yourself thinking thoughts that don't even seem like they're yours, they're bad thoughts, and you say, where is that coming from? Know that they might very well not be yours. They might come from some consciousness out there, and your job is not to feel guilty for thinking those thoughts, but just to feel that, to stop them. The Master said, as soon as a negative thought crosses your mind, just stop it. Be aware of it and stop it right there, and chant or meditate or do something that completely changes that thought into something else. And that's our battle. That's what we're called to do. And in this way, we can be victorious with Master's help. We can always call on God and Master to help us. One of the greatest delusions that mankind is subjected to by Satan, let's say, but the cosmic delusion is death. There are many delusions, but everything that makes us believe what is not true is a delusion. And a few days ago, a few of us went up to Ananda village for the memorial of two dear friends who just passed away. One of them is Peter Kretzmann's father. Some of you know Peter. He lives here with us. His father has been ill for a long time. He's been fighting cancer and passed away just a few days ago. The other dear friend is Leela. She was Swami's personal cook, and she was also helping him in many other ways, but mainly that's what she did for many years, and a very sweet and serviceful and high soul. Both of them were amazing devotees. And those of us who went witnessed an amazing thing. It was 2 nights in a row with 2 memorials. It was like back to back. It was kind of surreal, really. But to see how people who have been on this path for many years, their friends and families, how they dealt with it, how they were able to, they were refusing to look at death the way people usually look at it, as that final thing that is so sad, that there's nothing to do, that I have to be totally feeling down and sad. None of that. I'm sure that time will also come, and maybe it has already come at moments. But what I saw was people clinging to what they knew was right and true, and refusing to think otherwise. I just want to read to you a couple of things that both Peter and then another one by his mother Mary posted on Facebook. Some of you might have read them, but I think it's worth reading because it's such an amazing testimonial to the power of applying these teachings to fighting against delusion. So this is from Peter. Just hours before my dear father passed away yesterday, I happened to doze off for a few moments while I was there in the room with him. I was then blessed with a brief dream of him. In it, he was laughing with such pure joy, like someone had just said something really funny. I felt in my heart that he was saying, remember me this way. This is who I really am. When I awoke, I felt cleansed. My heart had grown heavy, seeing him go through such pain in the days and weeks leading up to yesterday. In that short dream, he took all the heaviness away from my heart and replaced it with his joyful, loving presence. During his final day and passing, he was filled with peace, was very uplifted. Now you can soar in joy, my dear friend and father. So this is somebody who's just lost his father. He's 27, and he's got an amazing perspective of what life is and what this life means to all of us. And this other one is from Mary, Peter's mom and wife of Tim, who just passed. Tim left his body on August 6th at 3:10 p.m. In the 3 days leading up to that moment, the family spent many hours chanting around his bedside. I am not ready to write much, except to say that he was in a state of bliss for many hours on the day he died, after months of a painful struggle. And yet he said to me, I have not suffered. He was fully awake, with eyes uplifted. In the final moments, he was guided by his elder son, Peter, chanting Om Guru into his right ear, while Swamiji's Om recording played in the background. A full conscious exit is an enormous blessing to us all. My friend Sharon Taylor was meditating in the next room and heard angelic bells ringing when he left his body. After the family prayers, I felt his bliss, and we all chanted again for an hour, participating in his astral welcoming. We miss his presence dearly, and yet we are comforted by his blissful attainment. Blessings and love to you all, Mary. So, when we were at the memorial, what was really amazing for me was we went up to the altar. There were pictures of Tim and pictures of the masters, and we then went to say, to give our love and to every member of the family. And when we got to Mary, he wasn't crying. She wasn't crying. She was in such a state of bliss. All she could say was, bless you, blessings to you. She was blessing everybody. She thanked me. She said, thank you for taking care of Peter. It was so like, what? Just in that moment, it was like totally not what I expected to hear. But I was watching her the whole time. She was in such a state. And later she told somebody that it's all because of Tim. I can feel his bliss right now. He's right here, and I can feel his bliss. And that's how I can do this. And so, there is so much to learn from this. And we were debating whether to go or not. And I am so happy and so grateful that we did go. Because once more, we were able to see what these teachings, what this path, what these masters can do in our lives. We have the potential to become free in this life. And while we get there, the masters are showing us what is possible. They are showing us that this is not real, that our home is in God. We're not stuck here, not at all. And there are so many ways that they show it to us. And whenever we need, whenever we're in dire need of help, when everything else, Peter and his brother David did a chant up there, a Sanskrit chant. I don't remember the words exactly, but the translation of it is that when there's nowhere else when I can turn for help, the only way is to turn inside, and that's where I find help. And it was so perfect for the occasion. They chanted it for, I think it was like an hour, while people were going up and greeting the family, and the place was packed, and everybody, when it took a long time, and they were chanting and chanting. And I was looking at them. They were so blissed out. You should have seen Peter was smiling the whole time. It totally didn't look like he was at his dad's funeral, for heaven's sakes. He was like having an experience of bliss. And so this is what the masters come to free us from the idea that, that delusion is powerful, that we cannot win, that we're weak, that we are completely doomed to this plane of existence. It's not true. And they come and tell us. And if we can just look carefully at the little things that happen to us every day, we find little hints of that truth. And when we go through experiences that are more painful, that seem unbearable to most of us, that's when they really come and so clearly help us and show us the way. And this is what happened for Peter's family, and this is what happened for Leela's family and all the people who were there for her. It was just amazing. Swamiji said a few words for both memorials. He was there for both. And for Leela, the one from Tim was almost funny because he said, he was obviously tearing up, and he said, "This is not fair. Let me just say, it's not fair." He goes, "All these young people die. I'm 86 and I'm still here. I am envious." But it was very, very sweet. And for Leela, he said, I observed her, I watched her for all the years that she's been my cook and she's been working with me. I have never seen one single flaw of character, and I believe she's now free spiritually. So I don't think there's much more to say. The only thing that comes to mind is a line from one of the songs from Swami's oratorio, Christ Lives. And he says, "He can redeem you from every evil. Friend, only think of him. Walk by his side." And that's the secret. Let's just all, in our hearts, commit ourselves to doing this every day, more and better, and Satan and delusion will never prevail, and we'll all be free. Blessings. But now.
Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Teach my heart to impart everywhere your delight. Sing of moon rays on the rain, sing that love's not in vain. Every grief, every wrong has its ending in song. Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Teach all men how to spin clouds of gloom into light. Without silence, what is song? Without night, where is dawn? Were it not for men's woes, who would smile at our woes? Nightingale, nightingale, sing of joy through the night. Let each tone silence groan, earth and heaven unite. Morning laughter, evening tears, snow and blossoms, all fade. Joy must sing in the night to face change.